The most powerful thing you have is what you have up here, what you have
Mhm.
in your brain and your mind. That knowledge that you encompass, that you've been exposed to, that you retain, is what will take you and shape you to be who you will be. And something that important should be protected at all costs.
Meet Janna Rodriguez, founder of the Innovative Daycare Corp. Discover why quality childcare is more than a service. It's an investment in children, families, and the future of our communities. Welcome to the Purpose Profit Shift, where real stories about bold shifts illuminate how we can create a new economy. I'm your host, Rachel Bernier Green, social entrepreneur, activist, and founder of Thrivo Financial Advisory, formerly known as EJ Consortium, a finance consulting firm designed to help purposeful businesses change the world. This show is powered by Thrivo Financial Advisory. If today's conversation sparked something for you, if you're sitting with questions about your numbers, your model, or what's next, that's exactly the work we do at Thrivo. Fractional CFO support for founders who refuse to separate money from mission. Book a conversation at jointhrivo.com. My guest today has spent more than 14 years building something this country desperately needs: childcare that actually works for families, for educators, and for the communities they serve. She's a first-generation college graduate, a Latina founder, and the woman behind the Innovative Daycare Corp in Freeport, New York. But she's not just running a business, she's organizing a movement, building a nonprofit, and standing at the policy table to fight for the workforce that makes all other work possible. Welcome to the Purpose Profit Shift, Janna Rodriguez.
Aw, thank you so much. That was such a great introduction. It made me emotional. It was like, wow, Jonna, you've actually done some great work, right? And I think many times we don't, take a step back and recognize our efforts and dedication and commitment. So thank you so much for inviting me on to your
Of
podcast today.
course. It is one of my favorite parts is watching people's faces during the intros because typically you're right, we don't look at our lives condensed into one paragraph, and we often don't take the time to sit back and say, yeah, you know what? I did that. And so it's nice to be able to celebrate that people in that way.
Yeah. We appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. So before we jump into the business, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the fact that you're a first generation college graduate and a Latina founder in an industry that this country has systematically refused to value, and also doing this work in a community that this country has also systematically refused to invest in.
Mm.
So before we get into the actual business, I want to take us back and think about what did family and work and survival look like for you growing up, and how does that show up in everything that you've built since?
Wow. That's a very thoughtful or thought provoking question, right? Because first and foremost, I'm a sibling of four. So my mother was a single mother who raised all four of us, two brothers and two sisters. And I think that I was very fortunate to be able to have a mother who truly uh, was a true role model for me because she instilled in me the importance of working for what you believe in and being consistent in your work ethic and understanding that it is reflective upon, who you become and who you're
Yep.
becoming in those moments of transition and journey. And so she has instilled the importance of being authentic, of loving who I am, and truly being committed to the work that I do now. And as a child, she really did create a sense of support system for us where it taught us the importance of education, education being at the core of everything. She
Mhm.
prioritized that above everything and taught us the importance of having empathy and love and caring for others and how we should not be self-centered. And she really instilled that and she modeled that behavior where it was truly reflective in who I've become today. And so, there were struggles and challenges growing up, being, four children with a single mom who worked two full-time jobs. but
Mm.
she was very present as much as she could be, and I definitely appreciate her dedication and commitment to the family and putting herself second when it came to each and every one of us, and hopefully one day I'll become that mom as well. That's super intentional and super loving and present, right?
Oh, I hope that for you as well. And it was really beautiful hearing you talk about your mom and that experience. So, coming from that background, what did you think was missing, in the childcare landscape when you started the Innovative Daycare Corp? And what made you believe that you were the person to fill it? Kind of how did you land in the education space?
Yeah, so that story, it brings me back because I think the importance of civic engagement and being a part of your community is what helped fuel it, right? So at a young age, 14 years old, I was in the community, very involved, civic engagement, and understood the importance of giving back. And, I always had this big dream of like, she's going to help change the world, but how is she going to do that? What space is she going to be able to do that in? And like I said, my mother focused very much on the importance of education. And so when I opened up my first childcare facility, which was in 2013, it was a home based residential daycare as well, with a partner. That transition period from 2013 to 2018 before opening the IDC was really that period of time that allowed me to create and sustain my foundation, really
Hmm.
thinking about who I wanted to be, how I wanted to do it, and who I wanted to be remembered and it
Yeah.
really helped shape me into being this, you know, bold, fierce Latina that I totally am, right? But one that, encompasses empathy and love at the core of everything that I do. And it was a very difficult transition period to close a facility that, helped shape who you are to then
Yeah.
start, the IDC, which began to be the, it encompassed everything that I wanted. And so it was scary, but exciting because it was like I was finally going to be able to cultivate the environment that I was missing as a child, not because my mother, couldn't create that environment, but because she didn't have access to childcare. So
Yeah.
we didn't have access to childcare when I was young. And so as an early childhood educator and understanding what those spaces look like, I knew that coming into the IDC, creating the IDC, I needed to make sure that every single step throughout that blueprint needed to encompass what I felt was missing for me as a child, right? And that took a lot of tears and a lot of long nights of thinking, is this a fit? Is this not a fit? Does this look right? Does this not look right? Does this system sustain and empower families, empower children? Does it uplift, families? And what does early childhood education look like in these spaces?
Yeah.
Right? I really wanted to go outside of the cookie cutter type of models that existed and thought, okay, I wanna create something that is innovative, invigorating, right? That, like, inspires you, that, like, makes every child that comes in say, like, I wanna be this when I grow up because you showed me that we can do this, right? Like,
Yeah.
that type of excitement to be brought back to education is exactly at the core of why the IDC was started, and to be rooted in community and in values of understanding what the needs are of the community that helped raise you, right? And to be able to give back is extremely powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And you alluded to this a little bit, but walk us through what it actually took to build IDC into what it is today. And what do you wish what's something about running a childcare program as a business that you wish more people from the outside looking in understood?
Yo, 3 questions. Okay, let's go one by one. So I think the first thing is, opening up the IDC. I think when you think of, okay, I'm going to be a small business owner, I want to embark on entrepreneurship, right? Not that it's going to be easy, but you don't truly understand the journey because you don't know it. So
So
unless
true.
you've been exposed to it, right? Like if your families and things like that, or people around you own businesses, then you kind of get a little, you have a little lens that you can reflect upon, right? But here I am going in with no reflection or lived experience prior. And so going into it, there were, long nights where I was just trying to ensure that everything was perfect, right? And we know that there's no such thing as being perfect or having things perfect, but there are perfect moments. And I had many perfect moments in which I was able to come out of those challenging moments, those tumultuous times, right? Where I thought, should I give up because I probably didn't make the right decision of doing this, of opening this up? I just closed the facility where I had a partner, where I felt that there was a support system that I had instilled there, but it really was never there. And now
Hmm.
I'm going to create my own space that I have to create that support system and then sustain that system, right? Because you can create something and that's amazing, but it's sustaining that system and allowing that growth within that transition period that truly encompasses like the journey of the IBC because I had to learn all of the struggles of being a small business owner when I opened the IBC, from understanding workman's comp stability, liability insurance, not because I didn't have that prior, but because I started to learn the policies that were behind it from the public policy standpoint and from the small business standpoint, like financially, right? This is what it's costing. How do I keep this budget, where I can be sustainable, right? Without imposing those costs on families. And I think the other part that was very transitional for me was the advocacy aspects of tying it into my business, of allowing my family to be advocates alongside me, understanding the
Mm.
importance of true partnership and what true partnership looks like um, as an early childhood educator, facility owner, right? Like, what does that truly look like as an on-site childcare provider? And it's been truly amazing to be able to have amazing partners alongside me, the amazing parents and families that I support, because some of them have been with me my entire career, right? Like their oldest is now, past 12 years old and now they have little ones and the little ones are with me. And so they've actually been able to see my growth and
Hmm.
and they've been able to reflect upon it, right? Like who I was 14 years ago. Am I that passionate, dedicated person? Of course. But I'm now a much more intentional educator, right? That
Right.
understands what developmentally appropriate, what age appropriate is, what those strategies look like, how to implement those strategies, especially when you're dealing with children with special needs or children that come from a different socioeconomic background. And what does that look like? And how do we implement systems in place to protect those children? Right. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been a journey and I'm still learning. I'm still learning, and I love that about it. That's what I love about early childhood education and being in the space and being an owner, because I'm constantly on a learning curve and I love to learn. And so, hopefully, I'll continue to learn and grow as I'm trying to expand and create the next chapter of the ID.
Yeah. And as you're kind of going through that, and I love that the way that you framed the parents as partners and advocates and not as, just
Client.
people who are clients that just consume your services. Um, and I don't see that a lot in the early childcare space. But I did want to come back to, because I threw a lot of questions at you, because I got very excited. But
Energy is just fierce right now.
it is. Um, if you could tell, like, if you could get up on a hill and tell everybody outside of your industry one thing about early childcare, what is the one thing that you wish more people understood about um, working in the space that you do?
That as unaffordable as it is for so many families, to understand that us, the owners, the early childhood educators who help create these spaces, would love to be able to provide that service at absolutely no cost, because that is what each child is deserving of. And that when it comes to accessibility to early childhood
Mhm.
education programs, how difficult that is for a lot of families, and that we understand that. And that is why
Mhm.
someone like myself truly is looking at how do we create more spaces for more children to be inspired and be our superstars that we help them become, but that we have to think as small business owners because the cost of running an early childhood education facility, especially one that provides services like a dual language program, is nationally accredited, is part of a performance improvement system like in New York, Quality Star New York. Like when you start adding those small pieces that don't seem like a lot to parents unless you explain it. So like my parents understand
Mm.
it because I'm constantly, giving them that information. Like, our quality star, representative is here today. We're going over like our curriculum and what does that look like and how do we mold it better and change it and where can we, be creative. And so I think that when you provide that information and teach our parents and our families
Yeah.
that we care for what is the work that we do and kind of not break down into steps of every single little thing, but kind of give them an overview of this is what it's like, right? We have compliance and regulations to abide by, right? Labor laws to abide by, right? That we can't have someone working here 10 hours a day and be compensated $5 an hour because that's the
Right.
move that the state compensates us, which is another advocacy role that I've taken on of advocating for universal childcare on a national level because every child deserves that. But more so importantly, just understanding that if there is this cost and it seems so high, understand that we are not profiting, right? To the point of like, hey, they're just making so much money that that's why they're charging that. And I see my parents truly understand that because I'm such a present, owner where I'm constantly at my business. There's not like a day that I'm not here unless I'm at a conference or my parents are aware. And I'm so transparent that I think that that is why my parents tell me, "When are you taking a vacation?" Like,
Yes.
we've taken 2 vacations, 3 vacations, you haven't taken 1, and yet you're here advocating every day for all children, especially our children that attend this facility. And, it's refreshing because they truly are partners in this with me,
Yes.
understanding that work-life balance is really important and that I'm their support system and that they become my support system, and I said to them, until this expansion that we are currently in the process of, and we'll talk about that a little later, until this is seen through, right? And is completed, that I can't really take a step back. But thank you for acknowledging the fact that I deserve that space.
Yeah.
And that in an essence in itself already tells me that the job that I'm doing is right. Because for a parent to understand that from the outside, right? Because I'm caring for their children and to think outside of what is important to them, which is their child, which of course makes sense, right? To think about me says a lot about the community that we've created here and the ones that we will
Yes.
continue to create when, the IDC.
And you raised so many, you just dropped so many gems right there that I am absolutely thrilled that you called a couple things out. We talk a lot about on the podcast about the regenerative economy that we're trying to build. And one of the key tenets of that regenerative economy is that we're shifting away from transactional business and doing more relationship oriented business that's looking at all of our stakeholders. And it's evident in the way that you talk about the parents and the children and the government involvement and your staff, that you really are thinking of all of the stakeholders in your
Right,
decision making. And then also the call out to universal childcare, how important I think that that is to note, because I think a lot of people, they try to make this dynamic where it's the parents against the people running the daycares because
correct,
daycare is so expensive.
correct,
And that dynamic doesn't help any of us. But what does help us is understanding that early childhood education is a universal good. It is
correct,
something that benefits all of us as a
right,
society,
correct,
and that we should not be in a us versus, childcare providers mentality. We need to be in a this is best in the best interest of the children and the
right,
best interest of our society as a whole for us
right,
to collectively invest in
right,
taking the burden off of because the daycare owner shouldn't carry the burden, the parents shouldn't carry the burden if it's something that's a net good for the entire society, that it leads to, lower crime, it leads to more engaged citizens. Like, the benefits of early childhood education are endless. that those are things that our tax dollars should be investing in.
And we totally will continue to advocate that until this country creates a universal childcare system where every child in this country is provided a space like the ID.
Yes, that would be the dream.
And that is definitely going to be the dream. And
Yeah,
we will get there. And we will get there because you know what? I've been doing this for 14 years now. And when I
right,
first started, I didn't hear much about the importance of it or it being a priority after the pandemic. And we became the backbone to this economy that we've always been. And people truly, truly understood the role that we played in the
right,
socioeconomic aspects of this economy and not of this economy, but of this in our spaces, right? Like we truly understood that you cannot have this ecosystem without understanding the importance of childcare because you won't have a workforce without it, right? And even
exactly.
if you are someone such as myself that isn't a mother, I haven't been blessed to be a mother yet, right? Hopefully I will one day, right? And create and have a system like the IDC to support me. But even for someone such as myself, all of my staff are mothers, right? And parents. And so if there is no access to childcare, then I have no access to a workforce, which means I have no small business that can thrive and that
Right.
can thrive or be sustainable because that is not sustainable. And so I think that, it scares people when you hear the word universal. What does that truly entail? Why should tax dollars be paying, for all children? But we already do that with our public school system. And we
Yeah.
understand that if we don't provide a foundation for each of these children, then how can you expect that your return on investment is going to be great? If we want to talk about economics, and let's talk about real economics.
Right. Exactly. So, kind of continuing on this, because we kind of dipped our toe into there's the economic underpinnings and systems and the political underpinnings and systems. And right now, you're running a bilingual, inclusive program in a
But
country that is actively trying to dismantle bilingual education, bilingual care. And I really am curious what it means to do this work in a moment where the work itself has become a political act.
hmm, well, I think you just have to believe in your values, stay firm in your conviction of who you are, and understand that even if things are being made political, to understand that it's bigger than just a political coy or a talking point for, news medias, right? And I'm very supportive of the news media because I understand the importance of journalism. But I say that in the sense of, you know, bringing it back to what's truly important and it's understanding that, scientifically we know that the brain development from 0 to 5 are the most important years of a child. And so
Right,
if you know that it's been scientifically proven to be that, which it has, right? Then why would you want to diminish any sort of resources or any sort of exposure that would advance the minds of these children? And we've seen scientifically proven, right, that when children are exposed to multiple languages, different cultures, that they're much more receptive to being more caring, more empathetic,
yes.
more understanding, loving, and that they can retain information much more, right? And so if we want to look at it from an educational standpoint, then look at it for what it truly is. That when you start thinking about dismantling, programs that are so critical and inclusive, right? Like such as the one that we have here at the IDC, that you understand that then you would be dismantling a system that's being put in place that's necessary to protect the children that we care for.
Right.
And so for me, anything or anyone or any organization that looks to dismantle anything positive to the reinforcement of the development of children, I will be completely always again. And I will always choose the children, their health and safety, their support system, their resources and tools that they need to be able to become the amazing leaders that they'll be tomorrow. Because I understand that if we do support them, that you will see the importance of what they then bring back into our society and contribute to our
Yeah.
society, right? And so, why would I think that it's appropriate to reduce the exposure of information that they have? We understand that the information that you have is something no one can take away from you, right? And I say this to the children that I care for, right? It's important for you to be who you are, to love who you are, but to be a respectful,
Yes.
kind person, but understand that the most powerful thing you have is what you have up here, what you have
Mhm.
in your brain and your mind. That knowledge that you encompass, that you've been exposed to, that you retain, is what will take you and shape you to be who you will be. And something that important should be protected at all costs.
Yeah. I love everything about that answer because it reminds me of a conversation I had recently with someone where they were we were talking about how some things have been made political and they were like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to be apolitical in this moment so that I don't offend people." But you said point blank period, if something is against or harms the children, I'm also against whatever that is.
Exactly. And I think that no one brings up that point, right? So instead of you stating, well, I don't agree with you, which again, we have a democratic system, that's fine, right?
Right.
Everybody's allowed freedom of speech here. But it's very different when you take that conversation and you say, well, the reason why I think that's not a great idea is because we see the effects that it has on children. Well, we look at the pandemic
Yeah.
and we saw remote learning because that's what we had to transition to for the moment that we were dealing with, which no one understood how to do things during that time period, right?
Right.
We saw the effects of that on children. We understood that in the pandemic, the social and emotional development of children were affected because of the fact that they had to be isolated due to the pandemic, which we
Right.
know we had to do. We had to pivot because of what was occurring at that time. But what we also learned was those early childhood education facilities that remained open for those essential employees, which to me, everyone's an essential employee, right? Remained open. We were able to analyze the data of those children that were in those facilities and how their social and emotional development did not regress
Hmm.
because of the fact that they consistently had a continuity of care present and a caregiver that was present the entire time, even during a time where we were all questioning what to do. In a time of panic, right? Children pay attention to the adults and the caregivers that care for them, and they react based off of the way you are composing yourself. And so, for the children in my care during that time period, they saw me calm, intentional, and present, and still loving and engaging with them as if it was not occurring. But I did not expose them to what was occurring. So I allowed them to understand what we were enduring, but I also taught them that this is a safe space, that I created this space for you, and that I am always going to protect this space no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And that is what you guys are going to have. You will always have me here. And don't ever think that you will be left out or left alone because we don't know what to do. So we may not have all the answers, but the one answer that I do have is that I will always be there for you. And I think that for the children that I care for, when they returned back to school, they were very much social, engaging. They weren't,
Yeah.
you saw a lot of children becoming very isolated,
Hmm.
becoming very, and not antisocial, but somewhat reserved in the way that they compose themselves around other people. You saw people be uncomfortable around groups of people, right? And so here there are, specific, data that we were able to learn from that truly introduced the importance. And we've always known this as early childhood educators and as educators that social and emotional development is at the core of what we do. But there was never a heightened focus on it till the pandemic,
Yeah.
where everyone understood, wow, look at how this child is acting returning back to school. Again, versus those that had that continuity of care that literally went back into those spaces and were able to thrive in those spaces because I was able to allow them to thrive under what, many considered, a time of we don't know what to do here. To them, it was just, but we had the same space. We
Mhm.
had our the same educator with us. We were provided meals. Some people didn't have meals during those times.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the different type of things of consequences that came out of that, because of, again, a pandemic, right? Then it's important to look at every little aspect of it, right? From food insecurity to, again, continuity of care, right? To safe spaces. So many people were displaced because they lost their job, right? Where
Right.
you did have a roof over your head that was consistent, right? And so those are really important when we're thinking about not just the family dynamics, but for a child who is trying to enter, a DOE school, right? That is structured, and we have our structure here as well, but we understand the importance of play, right?
Yeah.
Everything play related allows us to teach the most advanced topics ever. So I'm totally always for that, right? But with that being said, we learned that there was just such a drastic difference in those children. And there were so few children that had that continuity of care that we were really able to see that drastic change. I mean, you still see it today. You still see the effects of this today on the children. So, you know, again, I'll continue to always be their number one champion.
And I love that for them. I am sure that they will, you know, years from now, when they look back and reflect on their childhoods, that they will remember fondly the time that they spent at IDC and what an impact, you know, it made on them.
Yeah, and talking about that, one of the children that we did care for when he was 2 years old actually is gonna be coming back and interning now that he's 15, and so
Oh,
I'm like, "Wow,
that's
one
amazing.
one of my first children," and that is amazing because it's inspiring to me that it allows me to understand the importance of the work that I do, even though I know it.
Right.
I know the work.
Yeah, but it's different to see it in that way.
Very different to see it. It's very different to see a 14, 15-year-old child come to you and say, I wanna be with you again because I remember how it
Yeah.
was with you little, and it really just melts my heart because it teaches me that being consistent is very important when it comes to the development of children, and that we need more of that.
Absolutely. And so, as we're talking about kind of the growth of both the students at IDC, tell me a little bit more about IDC 2 that is in the works and kind of what made you make the decision that now is the time to go bigger.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I had this very big, bold dream at, like, 3 in the morning where I said, "Jonna, it's time. You've been working so hard. You don't think it's time for you to grow, to be able to have more support, more help, right? And so I started, embarking in 2020 on what does expansion look like? What would that encompass? What would it take to do? And so in 2025, we were able to purchase a property that is under construction as we speak, where we're able to locate the IDC permanently because where we are, we currently are leasing. So we're going to be moving the IDC to permanent location and creating the inception of the IDC2. And why the creation of the IDC2 is because I've seen the success of the IDC. Because I've been able to not only learn from the children that I had cared for, I've learned from the parents that have been my partners throughout this journey. And I've I've understood that these spaces are missing. And
Hmm.
especially when you're looking in underserved communities or and especially in immigrant communities, right?
Yeah,
Where you're seeing the lack of resources for those communities. So you know that those lack of resources are going to impact and affect directly those children that we care for. And here at the IDC being as inclusive as we are, right? We understand the importance of that at the core of what we do and that we needed to create more opportunity for more families to have that support system that's missing. And so, right now we're dealing with construction. We're going to see what that looks like in the next 6 months if we're able to finally, get the lending and financing in order because that has been a challenge of being a small business owner, as being a woman-owned business owner and being MWP certified as well, right? And having all of your ducks in a row and thinking this is going to be smooth sailing. I've done this for 12 years, 14 years, at the time we were looking at expanding. And it was like, this isn't going to be a challenge. And then it was like all the challenges that I've never ignored became so present. And I'm grateful for those experiences, because that experience in this moment that I'm currently in will teach me what it is like to not only scale your business, but to be that true entrepreneur that this country, truly allows, and the opportunity that it allows. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity here. And, once we get this financing in order, we know that it'll just be the opening the doors for us to be able to create the spaces that we need. And so we're looking forward to 2027, and hoping that we can open, IDC2 and give IDC its permanent location. And hopefully, we have some options out there, and we're looking at, what those options look like for us. And truly for me, as a small business owner, understanding lending. I think for many of
Yes,
them, that the lending language, and it's a different world. It's a world that, like,
it truly
I
is.
don't understand that world. I understand children and families and advocacy, and I even understand politics, but you brought me into lending and I said, this is not where I ever want to be. But I applaud those that do the work, because it's important work. Uh, but I've had to truly understand, how you have to truly sell yourself to allow for these lenders and banking institutions to believe in you. And I understand that that is always the case, right? But for me, I think, when I've been having conversations with the lending institutions, I've been saying to them, how could you not believe in the work that we do? And even if you believe in the work that we do, why do you think it's so risky to invest in early childhood education and childcare when you know that it's part of our ecosystem, and that we wouldn't have a workforce if it weren't for it? But because our profit margins are so thin, they're looking at it from an economical standpoint. But for me, I think that it's important to always think about the return on investment, and understanding that, yes, you may not make $1 million off of this one deal, but then you're impacting hundreds of lives of children that are going to be cared for at this facility, And even if it was just one child that would be cared for at this facility, that you empowered and you allowed for an environment to cultivate and spark the mind of our next who knows, right? And, like, why would you think that that's not worth investing? I've invested my entire savings into this dream, and if I truly didn't believe in it, I would not do that. I would not have done that. And I've done it because I believe in my dream, and I believe in myself, and that I believe that the children that I've cared for love me for what I've been able to create, and that we need to expand that. We need to provide that for more families. And so that is where we stand now. I had a great conversation with a bank called Stearns Bank. It's a woman led bank, and I was like, a woman what? And I was just it was so exciting to hear that, right? Not because this is a gender, we're against male, or we're against, this isn't that. That's not what this is about. What it's about is allowing lending institutions that are able to see the value of the work that women do. And when you have a woman that is leading an institution, right? Like Stearns Bank, which I'm just so ecstatic. I was like, oh my God, why haven't I heard about this bank before? Right? That you're like, wow, they're going to understand the sacrifice that we're doing, and they're going to understand the importance of the work that we do. And they're going to want to put their money there because they get it. And I think for many lending institutions, unfortunately, I've had to educate them on the importance of childcare and what it is and what it's like to operate a childcare facility and the cost of it. And even if my profit margins are thin, because you want to ensure that I can pay back these loans. And I understand the economic standpoint and perspective of it, but understand that there's a bigger picture surrounding the work that we do. And that you should believe in that. You should believe in that no matter what. And I'm not just telling you a story that's my story. I'm telling you the story, right? Like that important story that, like, every child should be invested into. And you shouldn't even think twice about it. And you should do everything in your power to make that happen. And so, we've also been able to have great conversations with Harvest Bank. And so, when you have lending institutions such as Harvest and Stearns, right, it really brought back joy to me, because for the past 4 months, I have been dealing with lending institutions that completely just said, you're too risky.
And
We
I'd
don't.
love to dig in there a bit because we've talked offline about this, and I want to make sure we bring it to the audience because I think a lot of people think, well, oh, childcare, yeah, the profit margins might be small, but it's very stable. And they think, of course, you can just go to any bank and get an SBA loan, which is not the case. So, can you tell us more about your experience trying to go down that path and kind of what you learned from it?
Yeah, I think I think the most important thing that I learned is that not everybody is going to understand your vision,
Mm,
and you really have to learn to speak the lending language
yes.
and be able to uh, really
Mm,
show them how this is an economic investment and the importance of it. And I've also had to understand, the barriers and regulations to from the federal government to state and local, and what lenders can do and what some can't do. And with the SBA, there's a lot of restrictions, with owner occupied, and there's all these different barriers that I've had to learn, But I think that the most important thing that I've learned from this journey while dealing with lending is that you're never enough. And it was saddening to me because it was like, I've done everything right, you know? I didn't take any loans for 14 years, right? I don't really have much debt. I don't even have school loans. I mean, how many people do you know don't have any college loans? And I'm finishing up my master's as we speak in early childhood education. So this is
congrats
the
in
fall of
advance because
2026 is
that's amazing.
my last semester. I mean, I'll be student teaching. I go to CUNY Brooklyn. I'm a huge CUNY mascot. I went to CUNY York undergrad, CUNY Brooklyn for grad school. So shout out to CUNY. But with that being said, right, I'll be doing student teaching at Great Neck Public Schools, which I'm very grateful for them for offering me the opportunity to student teach there because they have an amazing district. But with that being said, right, like, here's someone who had made sure they stayed sustainable. There's
Mhm.
never been, like, a gap in the business itself, right? It's been continuous throughout these years, right? The books have been in order. Taxes have been done every year. We don't have any debt. We don't have any business loans or anything like that, right, on the business. And we've been able to stay sustainable with a full program at capacity, right, with a wait list. And
Mhm.
MWBE certified, through the state of New York, Suffolk County, Nassau County, through New York City, right? SDA certified. I mean, when you think about trying to do everything on the checklist because you've been taught that that is what you must do because you won't be good enough to get past the first door. And then to get past that checklist and get to the first door where you've invested your entire life savings, right? That some people never are even able to even see $50,000, $100,000, let alone $400,000, right? To say, right, you're still not enough because you're too risky. Because what you want to do is too much. It's too big. You need to think smaller. You need to scale it down because you're thinking too much. And it really made me question if I was making the right decisions in my life and if I was doing the right thing. And then I was talking to the children that I care for, and we were having a discussion because we always have like a sit down where we're like, "How did they go?" And like, "What did you do over the weekend?" Like, "What did I do?" And they always want to know what I did. Were you cleaning? Because I love to clean. And when we were having a discussion, and they were like, "So Miss J, what's gonna happen when is the new daycare gonna open?" Well, we're so excited to go there, and it brought me right back to the whole reason why I'm even doing this and why I believed in it and why I invested and upfronted all the costs myself before I went and got lending, right? Financing because I thought that if I did that, that I was doing the right thing by
Mm,
upfronting the cost, showing my investment, showing skin in the game, getting variances approved, site plan improved, huge shout out to the Incorporated Village of Freeport, a community that helped raise me and has been supportive of my project. Everyone from the mayor all the way down to the building department, thank you. Right. But and that support system is important, right? But here we are, we were able to get all of that done to then be told, well, you're thinking too big.
mm,
And you know what? I know it's going to take a special bank out there that's just going to understand the importance of childcare, the importance of the work that women do, the importance of being a minority women owned business. in these times, and the fact that the work that we do is so critical for our economy, and that yes, it may look risky because it's a large expansion, right? It's $1 million construction project, right? So imagine how I feel. I'm the one that has to sign off on a loan, that's above $1 million. Who would think at 36 that I would be signing off, on a debt so large? I would probably, I'm nervous, right? Because it's natural to be nervous because I've never endured anything like this at this capacity. But I know that it's the right thing, and I'm looking forward to, a bank out there that believes in my dream, that believes in the work that we do, that sees the consistency in the work that we do, the sustainability that we've had for 14 years, and truly says, we're going to take the risk on you, and we're going to believe in you, right? And that bank is going to be the spark for the type of transformational change that we're looking to do in early childhood education on a national level. And the IDC is going to help spark that. And it's not because no one else has done amazing work, right? Because there's been, you know, trailblazers that have paved the way for me to be able to be this confident in this space right now. And I am forever grateful for them. But it's also time for me to take my energy, my experience, my space, and take it to another level, because that is what is deserving in the time that we're living in.
Yeah.
Childcare is completely under attack. It's completely in a crisis. And it's time that we create the sustainable, equitable, accessible, and affordable childcare system that every child in this country deserves. And like I said before, I won't stop until I see that through, even if it takes me till I get 100 years old, because I believe I'm going to get to that. I believe I am. I have too much passion, right? But until we reach that, I'm not going to stop. And that the IDC and its creation of the IDC to its sister site will be a catalyst of thinking about how do we transform spaces by incorporating indoor gyms when it comes to residential based childcare facilities when you don't see that, right? What does it look like creating, calming spaces and spaces that are invigorating for children with special needs, because now you have the space to be able to do that, to truly be able to create the environment and the classroom to say, this space is meant for all children, right? And so that $1 million plus that I'm spending, I will sign off on it with my eyes closed, because I understand and believe in the work that we do. And I say we because there's no way I would have gotten here alone, right? I got here because I have a lot of support systems in place that have helped amplify my voice, uplift me, and push me and
Yeah.
challenge me in the ways that I know I needed. And maybe at times I didn't know I needed and they still did. And I am very appreciative of those organizations, you know? And I know you're going to ask regarding that because it's really important to talk about those systems and organizations that have been there and that understand the work that we do. And so I'll stop there, so that we can continue going into that. But I wouldn't be able to be here if it weren't for that.
Well, I that is a perfect segue because I know that I can't believe how fast this conversation is going, but I want to definitely talk about some of your advocacy work. And so I think that this can lead us into it. And I know that on, is it May 11th, you did the Day Without Childcare in Long Island, and you convened providers and families and public officials. And just tell us a little bit about what that day looked like on the ground and what you wanted the policymakers, the parents, and the general public to kind of take away from it.
Yeah. So A Day Without Childcare was created by a group of us. We were very fortunate to have an organization like Community Change um, support us in creating what we call today childcare change makers. And we understood that it was time to change things. It was the time, right? Like at that point in time during the pandemic where everyone was scared and no one knew what to do, how could we truly be transformational? And so a few of us across states, right? So it wasn't like just a group of us in New York State thought about this.
Right.
No, no. There were a few of us that were super intentional throughout states across this country, 10 of us, right? That came together and said, how can we move us forward as a sector? And what can we do to help shape the way that childcare is after we come out of the pandemic, right? And at
Right.
that time, we didn't even know if we would. We didn't know what was what at that
Yeah.
point, right? We didn't know, right? And we were all speaking, and I remember, we were all having conversations saying, "Well, just close our doors." I said, "I'm totally for it. Let's completely close our doors." And people were so afraid, right? Well, you can't do that. You're gonna impose it on the families, and we all thought about that. It's not that we didn't think about that, right? But as change makers, as the name that we were given, right? We knew that we needed to be instrumental, and firm in our conviction of our act. And that act was that if we didn't close our doors, how else were we going to be able to show how pivotal and how critical we are to the ecosystem in this country? There was no other way around it. We had already had our trailblazers from 20 years, 30 years ago talk about the importance of childcare, go up to Albany and Washington and talk to elected officials. Like, what else did we have to do? And again, it brings me right back to, right, this truly being a challenge and an issue for women, because it was like, here are a group of women yelling loud and saying, enough is enough. This is what we're going to do. And whether you like it or not, whether you're judging us in a negative or positive way, this is what we're going to do, because we are prioritizing the importance of every child in this country. And we're prioritizing the importance of the workforce, understanding that no one in this country should be paid $6 or $7 an hour, working a
Right.
10-hour shift, having no PTOD, no vacation, no sick, right? Having access to absolutely no benefits, okay? Not even being compensated for holidays, because you couldn't be given a day off, God forbid, right? And so with that being said, we understood that we had to do something dramatic, right? And so in 2021, we had our first day without childcare, and we always do it the Monday after Mother's Day, because we want to honor, right, our mothers, not because we don't honor our fathers, because I honor our fathers and I honor the men that are in early childhood education, because it's a very small percentage of them. And I love to uplift them within this space, because we need them in this space. And we appreciate the ones that are in this space, because our children need to see them and have them present, right? But we have undervalued and looked down upon women, because we've shown women and had taught women to serve at the capacity of whatever it may be, to be provided with the pennies that are available. And so with that being said, we knew that we wanted this to be intentional. And so we honored it by doing it after Mother's Day, that Monday, so that all families, providers, advocates, community members, and elected officials all came together and understood that we are going to advocate for these items. And the top items, our priorities are a universal childcare system that is rooted
Yes.
that's equitable, that is accessible, that is affordable, right? That we understood the importance of the workforce, that they are paid a livable wage, okay?
Yes.
That they are provided benefits and access to anything like a retirement account, because that is what
Hmm.
every American in this country deserves to have, especially if you're working a full time job, right? Imagine working 20 years in a full time position and having no retirement account, because you're so dedicated to this field. There's so many of them. And we are very grateful and honor them and their work, right? Because that is why the few of us that came together, that it was time to do something that only this generation was bold enough to do. We're just closing our doors. Not because we're imposing it on our families, because all of my families participate on a day without childcare since 2021. They all take off that day, and what we do is we close half a day, just because a lot of our children are accepting subsidies, which is like state system vouchers. In New York, we call it CCAP, and I'm grateful that we changed that with our advocacy work with both here in New York. Shout out to New York. Huge New Yorker, you can probably tell by my accent. But with that being said, right, we have CCAP, and if you were to close, you weren't compensated for that day, unless it was a professional development day, even though a day without childcare is totally a professional development day. because you're advocating on behalf of children and families, which is exactly the work that we do. But that's for another advocacy day for me to do and deal with. But we can't physically, if we close, then not only would I be paying my staff for that day, it would be too much of a negative on the small business aspect of me running my business. And so we came up with a creative way of closing half a day, right? So parents could get themselves together and things like that. And then we have an event in the backyard where we invite all of the elected officials. We have an arts and crafts table for the children. We allow the children to speak about the importance of childcare, which I think is so important to give them that space, that platform to be authentic and allow others to understand why we do this work, right? And the family there, allowing my family, my parents to talk about it. They've been with me throughout this entire journey. And so they
Yeah.
are huge advocates and cheerleaders of mine as I am for them. And to really hold accountable the elected officials that we elect into office, understanding that you represent this district. And within this district, there's a childcare crisis, even though it's a national one. And that we want to know what you are willing to do in order to support your constituents in your district. And so, we've been very grateful that our elected officials have always came. The mayor of our town, Mayor Kennedy, has always participated since the first day without childcare that we did, which we're grateful for. You know what I mean? And so it's important to have them present at those spaces because it's those spaces where they truly understand the work that we do because they're just
Yeah.
not reading about it through an article, right? Or a newspaper, right? And we appreciate that because we need those spaces to elevate our stories. But it's different when you're in person listening to a 6 or 7 year old talk about the importance of childcare and that I wouldn't love others if it weren't for Miss J teaching me that. And I wouldn't understand what childcare does if it wasn't because I have access to childcare and I have a place to come to every day after school, who helps me with my homework, who provides the nutritional meal. Like these children understand that. And it's
Yeah.
very different to hear it come out of the mouths of a 6 and a 7 year old versus a
Yeah.
36-year-old who constantly has advocated and will constantly continue advocating. Right? At that point, they're like, okay, Jonna, we totally hear you. We always hear you. But it's very different to say that to a 6 and 7 year old, right? That is saying, please invest in this. Understand the importance of this. This is so important for us. And that's what it's been like. And so we've had over 75 to 100 people at each of our events. And so this year was just that successful. And we're very grateful to all of the local newspapers that came out and understood the importance of it and highlighted the importance of the day without childcare. And to my family, most importantly, thank you for always supporting me and supporting the advocacy efforts because it's about the children, your children, right? It's about one day being that support system for me. We have to create that sustainable system. And it's going to take an entire village to be able to do that, an entire nation to come together and understanding the importance of early childhood education. And that's what a day without childcare is, and that is why childcare change makers was created, right? And that is what we will continue to do as we move forward and continue to advocate on behalf of all children and families in this country.
I that was such a great not just a great answer to the question, but thank you for the deep dive on what a day without childcare was about and the scope of the project and the impact that you're seeking to make, not just in New York but nationwide. Because I think that that is really a perfect way to kind of wrap the conversation because we, talked about the advocacy aspect. You talked about the impact on the children and how this is really a joint effort, that it takes the policymakers, it takes the parents, it takes the educators, that we have to collectively come together to think of better solutions that truly meet the needs of all of the stakeholders involved.
Yeah. So again, right? It may sound like it's been smooth sailing, right? When you sometimes you hear you've been doing this for 14 years. Wow. It must have been so smooth sailing for you. And it's quite the opposite. And it's not that it hasn't been smooth sailing, it's that it's been a journey that I wouldn't choose any other way. Right? And so I think I didn't become the leader I am today alone, right? My journey was shaped by mentors that I had, right? Providers, organizations, right? Such as childcare change makers, small business majority, the Council for Professional Study, right? The union who helps represent, childcare providers across the country, CSDA voice, right? Me being the chapter rep for Nassau County, like how instrumental that's been in allowing me to advocate on a more local and state level, right? And
Yeah.
that community that I'm from as well invested in me, right? That I'm from the incorporated village of Freeport. I'm a proud Freeporter, and now I feel a responsibility to do the thing for others, and I've done that for the past 14 years, and now it's time to embark on that new journey of being able to provide more of that space for other families and become their support system. And so we're looking forward to, you know, that new journey of IDC getting its permanent location and IDC2 opening in 20 of 27.
As am I. I can't wait to have you back to hear all about it as the journey progresses because you are doing amazing work both for the kids in your immediate facility, but also for your community and for everyone that is listening. If today's conversation moved you, I just would really encourage you to do something with it. So you can start by learning about Day Without Childcare and the providers that are organizing in your own community by heading to daywithoutchildcare.org. And you can also call your state legislators and tell them to fund the workforce, not just the seats, because we not only need universal childcare, but we need the women and brown and black providers doing this labor to be paid like the essential workers they are. And you can also support Janna directly by following the Innovative Daycare Corp at innovativedaycarecorp.com. You can follow her on Instagram at Innovative Daycare Corp, and connect with her on LinkedIn. And if you're a founder building a mission driven business and you want to be in the room with others doing the same, you can always join us at jointhrivo.com. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. As always, if this conversation resonated with you, here's what you can do. Subscribe to The Purpose Profit Shift wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got episodes dropping regularly with more visionary founders and change makers who are reshaping how business gets done. And if you found value in today's episode, leave us a rating and review. It helps other values-driven leaders find us. Until next time, keep leading with intention, scaling responsibly, and building businesses that matter. I'm Rachel Brunier Green, and this is The Purpose Profit Shift.